Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Come on in. Give me a sound check, and we will have the show that we deserve. We will have the show that we deserve. Hi, Nishant, says Mr. Abhishek Sharma. Good morning, Mr. Sharma. Can you hear me? Should we begin? Good morning. Audible. Beautiful. Beautiful. That sets us up. Let's have the show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Before we go, we gotta follow tradition, right? You know the tradition. You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. So get your beverages ready, folks, because all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug or glass or tank, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water with black pepper in it. And here we go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Sublime. Let's do it again. Healing. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you are not alone. It says that you are in this together. We are in this together. That's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. Good morning, says Mr. Ratnesh Chaubey. Good morning, Mr. Chaubey. Some comments. Good morning, says Mr. Piyush Sethi, Mr. Vaibhav Manecha, and Mr. Sumant Kumar. He says, hey Nishant, I happened to watch your video 6-year back video with Sarthak. You look so different back then. Yeah. Sarthak. How I read this book, right? We used to review books. We used to read so many books that we started thinking that it'd be a good idea to review them. Yeah, those were the young days. Thank you so much, Mr. Sumant Kumar. So let's begin, folks. the news for today is that Mr. Donald Trump and Mr. President Xi Jinping met, and the verdict is that US folded. China showed them who's boss, and now things are getting back together. So from 57%, they dropped the tariffs to 47%. China said, okay, you can have the rare earths. China said that we'll buy some of your soybean exports. China said the, that we can be back in business. US obviously had to take back the tariff position, right? US is very lucky to have gotten the rare earth minerals, and US is looking at a renewed partnership where it seems like it won't be able to bully China anymore, right? That's the long and short of it, essentially. So while it was looking like US has a lot of chips, it became pretty clear that it doesn't really, right? China, just with a little muscle flex of blocking the rare earth mineral supply, brought everyone down to their knees, and US had to essentially fold. Nothing could happen. No strong arm tactics by Mr. Donald Trump. He just had to accept whatever Chinese side was, all for rare earth minerals. So all for rare earth minerals, right? By the way, India has also gotten the rare earth mineral flow back. China green flag up. 4 Indian companies set to import rare earth magnets. So China has given a clear indication that you can't export this to US. This is for your internal use only, right? Re-exports will be banned, and military use not applied. Uh, not possible. Mr. Abhishek Sharma writes a comment. By the way, is China in position to not offer rare earth minerals for long term? Of course, of course. Like, who can stop them? And this is, by the way, one of the very long list of the muscle flexes that China can have. Right? This was the smallest piece of it, by the way. The rare earth magnet play. This is the smallest piece of what China can do if it came to it. Right? So China is essentially, we must not forget, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember that China has 90% of all active pharmaceuticals ingredients, APIs, ingredients with it. It controls all that supply and more. It controls all the battery supply and more. It controls all the solar play and more. So this was just a very, very small example of where China could flex its muscles. And when it did, right? And now it's gotten a bit softer with everything. Now, but, there is a bad news for India. There is a bad news for India, right? When it came to China and US relationship, and China could flex its muscles and bring US to a very mature and sort of stable position, where does it lead India? Because India is going to be signing its deal with US very soon, right? Does it give US a lot of freeway to sort of pressurize India? That is obviously a very good question to ask, right? Because if China and US are sorted, how will India benefit from whatever India was supposed to benefit, right? From. So essentially, it leads to some nervousness for India. That's what the experts are saying. I mean, experts when it comes to geopolitical observers, they're saying it could be difficult for India to cut a strong deal with US now that US and China's relationships are sort of more stable. So that's what's happening with the play. US has said that China will be stopping with the Russian oil supplies, although nothing in that sort is cleared. No talks on Nvidia, right? Trump said China is going to talk to Nvidia separately. Then, China essentially also talked about fentanyl supplies. So we talked about it. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember. What is the biggest problem US is facing right now? The absolute decimation of its youth because of the fentanyl overdose. So Chinese fentanyl is, flooding the US markets, and youth, like the young population, is overdosing on fentanyl and it's dying. It's similar to what British Empire did to China with its opium war, right? It basically killed the Chinese youth with opium. That's exactly what China has done essentially in US with the fentanyl play. So US didn't really get anything sorted on that regard, but yeah, some moves on that regard. Uh, Mr. Trump said that China is going to stop actively fight the fentanyl supply in the US. So US is in a very weak situation as mentioned earlier, right? No, nothing for leverage except for the $30 trillion economy that it has, the domestic consumption play. However, that is also not a leverage point because all that domestic market is directly or indirectly dependent on China. So there was no leverage, right? All the leverage rests with China. What if China, after this, doesn't really lead to any fentanyl stopping to US and it just keeps their youth drugged and overdosed and dead like walking zombies? Yeah, it can still happen and it will happen. So here, you heard it here first. Despite whatever Trump claims to have achieved in this particular conversation, in this meet, all the problems will be almost as they were, right? Fentanyl will still flow in the US in some way or the other. Chinese supplies will still be looking at all sorts of plays. Nvidia will still be where it was. Everything will still be where it was. It's just that US has essentially lowered the Chinese tariffs from 57 to 47. That's what you hear or you heard it here first. So Trump is, basically a TV guy. He is into reality TV. But this ain't reality TV, as Jack Nicholson said in, The Departed, a great movie. So this ain't reality TV. So whatever he claims to have achieved, it's gonna be business as usual, is the prediction. So let's see what happens with India's deal. Do we get the tariffs lowered to 16%? Right? That's something that we ought to hope for. Moving on, there's some comments. Mr. Abhishek Sharma says, is by the way China position okay? So what advantage do they gain by offering them now? Apart from business, is there any other reason why they offer to let go of the rare earth mineral supply? So the answer to this is China doesn't want quick substitutes of its rare earth situation, right? It doesn't want the rare earth situation to essentially lead to better outcomes for the West because people are looking at replacements and everybody knows that people will stop looking at replacements as soon as the supplies start pouring in again, right? That's the nature. So it's a push and pull play that we give it not, we give it not, so that the world stays on the edge and the whole replacement paradigm is sort of delayed because that's the nature of this trade program, right? Everybody thought that after COVID, everything is going to shift away from China. Barely anything moved, barely any needle moved because people like to stay where they stay, right? What is that? First law or second law? Body stays inertia, essentially. So inertia is something that China knows is in its favor. So it just lets it go for a while, then stops it. It uses as a perpetual trade negotiation trick, right? Because you have it. So you use it. So that's what's happening with America and China. China is the new boss, everybody should know. And that is, of course, not a good news for India. Moving on, folks. Lenskart, essentially, going public. And in Lenskart's public IPO, all the mutual funds have participated, apart from Nippon. So apart from Nippon, all the mutual fund guys essentially signed up for Lenskart's super premium valuation. So that is pretty pathetic, if you ask me. That is a straight finger to all the public investors who had been rallying, saying that this is an atrocious deal. It's an atrocious deal, but they somehow still participated in it. What does it say about the whole public faith kind of a play, right? Essentially, Mr. Piyush Bansal said, we are just selling at people at a fair market price, at the price that they're willing to buy. That is exactly what Mr. Jeremy Irons said in Margin Call, right? The Lehman Brothers movie that we keep talking about. We are selling to willing buyers at a price they're willing to pay, right? Even though if we know that the security is inherently bullshit. So these people all bought it, right? Even NPS participated. That's sad, says Mr. Tushar Tiwari. It is sad indeed, folks. It is very weird, very weird. Like institutional participation. Now it's to be seen what happens with the retail participation. If anything, really, if the chatter online really matters, right? If the chatter online really matters, it'll come to that judgment call, or let's say, what is that? There's a word for it. It'll be moment of truth. Yeah, moment of truth for all the chatter online, if that even matters on the ground. That'll be up in the air, right? Just in 2 or 3 days. So let's see what happens. By the way, folks, Mr. Piyush Sethi asked, did we achieve the target collection for an intern? So that's a good news. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency, after Mr. Sumant Kumar came along, right? He gave the first donation for Thinkers Frequency, $5,000. Then Mr. Barun Sharma stepped in, 500. Then Mr. Supreet Kumar, $100. Then two people stepped in, Mr. Piyush Sethi, about 1,500 or $1,000. And then Mr. Vaibhav, Yogendra Pratap Singh, sorry, again, $1,500. So people have really gone ahead. They have really, done their bit. So we've collected, I'll tell you how much we've collected as of now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just 1 second, folks. So, Mr. Abhishek Sharma has also donated $500. So we've collected $9,700. That is incredible. In 2 days, we could do that, right? We need some 300 or so more, a little more, so that we have a bit of a runway, right? So that we don't have to do this every month. But yeah, this is very, very great. This is awesome. So now we're going to have a StreamYard play. We're going to have a TV thing running. We're going to invite viewers of Thinkers Frequency to join as panelists every once in a while. And then we'll also have an intern for doing our bit, right? The shorts creation and the uh, uh, episode labeling and so on and so on. This is awesome. This is awesome, right? A few bucks more and we'll be golden for a month at least. This is awesome. Woohoo! Awesome, says Mr. Piyush Sethi. This is the power. This is the power of something nice, folks. It's awesome. It's very, very good. So let's see if we can raise the rest of it and then some more to have a stable runway kind of a situation. Anybody who has any recommendations for the intern, please let me know. Right? That'll be awesome. We'll get that intern and he'll also learn something. He'll also watch Thinkers Frequency and then he'll help us out and then he'll get paid for it. Right? So awesome. That is cool. So we'll get everything sorted starting November. That's awesome. That's awesome, folks. So this was Lenskart. However, there's another company which is going public, which is Grow. Grow is pretty awesome, right? Grow is a huge. There's no way to lose money in this business, right? The stockbroking thing, it just perpetually makes a lot of money because people start trading. When people are trading, right? You make money on commissions. If people are not trading, you can send mutual funds and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of money in money. I'll say that again. There's a lot of money in money, right? So if you may want to make money, you want to go with finance, add some tech. It's a very predictable way to make money. And Grow is getting valued at $6 to $7 billion, right? That's awesome. And it's a green project. It's a green project. And promoters are not selling shares, of course. Employees are making about 2,500 to 2.4 thousand crores. And the company's prospects are extraordinary, right? I feel bad for Zerodha because I see Grow taking over Zerodha's market with rocket speed. So, and there are two reasons for it. It didn't have to be this way. But Zerodha has a philosophy of not advertising, right? Zerodha says that we don't want to advertise because we don't want to look at people from a lifetime value perspective. Whoever comes on our platform, we encourage them to not trade, to stay invested, because the way to make money by trading, by investing in stocks is to not trade, right? So that's what Mr. Nitin Kamath says. It's all visionary. It's all beautiful. It's the right way to build a business. He says we don't want to advertise. We don't want to look at people through an LTV lens. We don't want to sell them, right? We want them to preserve their capital. We want what's best for them and so on and so forth. So, and we also won't go public because we don't want to deal with all that scrutiny. We don't want to have growth targets set by the street quarter on quarter. We want to have long term vision of building our product and building our company and building our investments. So that's a very very long term view, right? That's a very noble view, that's a very kind view, a very altruistic beautiful view. However, the only problem I have is that there it doesn't make sense to be anti advertising. I'll say that again. It doesn't make sense to be anti advertising for Zerodha because of that no advertising stance, right? It'll lose the customers of tomorrow. So I'll say that again. Because of that non advertising stance, Zerodha will lose the customers of tomorrow. Yes, right now, Zerodha has the most number of active traders, the people with money, they still rest with Zerodha. So even if Grow has more number of people, more number of customers, Zerodha has more number of people who have actual money, right? So that's cool. But if it doesn't choose to advertise, the referrals will somehow not be able to keep pace with the power of direct messaging. And advertising doesn't have to be evil, right? Advertising doesn't have to be bad. Advertising doesn't have to be uh, you know twisted in order to milk somebody unfairly. They can still go because this online chatter, it has a limited reach. Like we think that because there's so much of virality going around us, things will change, right? But this is a very very small market. uh, Actual conversations, the tier 2 tier 3 people, they still look at whatever they look at, right? And you need to get those people in, and those people will be better served by Zerodha because of the good practices of Zerodha. So if Zerodha doesn't choose to advertise, it's actually hurting those customers because then those customers will be going to a competing service which doesn't care about them as much, which wants them to trade, which wants them to keep giving them commissions, which has targets, which has quarterly targets, which has investors to satiate, right? So all the other companies in the business, they they are bound by those fiduciary duties, let's say, not Zerodha. So if Zerodha chooses to be away from all that, right, it's essentially pushing those people in the arms of the competitors and in a way hurting them. So that is my reading of the situation. I think Zerodha should advertise, and I'm not talking about indirect funding of some media group which is doing a good messaging. No, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about direct, meaningful advertising, like socially conscious, message driven advertising. If Zerodha does that, it's gonna help not just itself but everybody because it's losing ground to grow, and that's a very sad thing. Uh, Mr. Abhishek Sharma says, couple of other reasons where Zerodha lags behind Grow: lower product offerings like loan, etc., separate app for mutual funds. So it's going up. It's offering those things. I don't know about loans. Maybe Zerodha is not offering loans. I don't know about that. But they do have the fund thing, and they are not selling that as well. So it's a very organic kind of a play. By the way, Zerodha has grown without advertising all this while. So all the 8,000 crores in revenue, or maybe 10,000 crores they must have crossed, right? All of that is zero advertising. It's just referrals and PR. So that's extraordinary, of course. That is pretty extraordinary. But what worked for you here, what wouldn't work for you there, is the philosophy, which obviously applies. Just because these things worked in the past doesn't mean that they'll work in the future. And as time goes by and as these companies get aggressive, as Reliance tries to enter that business, it's only going to get difficult for an organic player like Zerodha to hold its ground, right? So I think Zerodha is just losing customers by not advertising, and I hope they reconsider. I wrote a post about that when I was paying a tribute to Mr. Piyush Pandey. I wrote that, let's say, Mr. Piyush Pandey stood for advertising which touched hearts, right? So it touched hearts. And Zerodha could learn a lot from Mr. Piyush Pandey and have an advertising campaign which touches hearts, so that it can actually help customers, because it's the company has the most goodwill, the highest of goodwill that any private enterprise can afford to earn, right? So it could use that and it could leverage that. But for now, Grow is looking like it's winning, and it's going to be a public company now. As it becomes a public company, the flip side to this is, when Grow becomes a public company, and let's say something wrong happens to the equity markets, it's gonna hurt Grow's near-term prospects, right? Which is exactly what Mr. Nitin Kamath has been saying since 2020. He's been saying that, the market could crash, the market could crash, the market could crash, and when the market crashes, people won't trade so much, and when people don't trade so much, we won't make so much money. So our business looks good, but it's not as good, right? And so on and so forth. That's how he's been talking. But Grow can obviously diversify, which is what it's doing. So it's diversifying. It's hedging the risk of being overtly dependent on the trading revenue, the trading money. So the company has great prospects. It just makes sense to put money in Grow and just forget about it, and there's a very high chance that it'll keep growing, unless these people turn out to be crooks, right? Because that also sometimes happens. Uh, anyway, folks, speaking of markets, and speaking of markets where it and where they are going, uh, something really interesting is happening, folks. Something really interesting is happening. Michael Burry sir came out. Michael Burry? Michael Burry sir, the Cyan Capital person, the person on which Big Short is based. The Big Short, the movie, the book, Michael Lewis book, Big Short, a great book, an extraordinary book. And on that book, there's a movie. Adam McKay, I guess, he directed it. Christian Bale, Mr. Christian Bale played the character of Michael Burry. He has come out with a very interesting tweet. I love him. I love him. If you want to watch something very incredible, right? And 15 minutes, if you have 15 minutes and you want to watch something very incredible, you watch his commencement speech for a university. So write Michael Burry's speech, and it's one of the best speeches that you will read. You will watch. So he says, sometimes we see bubbles, sometimes there's something to do about it, sometimes the only willing move is not to play. Isn't that genius writing? Isn't that genius writing, folks? I'll say it again. Sometimes we see bubbles. Sometimes there's something to do about it. Sometimes the only winning move is not to play. And this is, of course, something that I've been talking about. Of course, I've learned it from him and people like him. The best thing you can do while making money is not to lose money. This is what he means, right? Sometimes the best thing is to not play. So he came out with, in 2023 January, I guess, he said sell, right? And then the market kept growing, and a month later he came out that he was wrong, and he didn't see it coming. And since 2023, the market has only flown up, up, up like never before, right? So the shorts that he had placed, he liquidated them very early. But if he would have stayed in those shocks, he would have been on the road. That's the situation of the market. And he says, we best not play. That's the reading of the situation. That's a very, very good quote, right? That's about hedging the risks. Speaking of the patron thing that we talked about, let me share the link. I've been advised by my Thinkers Frequency viewers that keep sharing the link so that people can participate. So yeah, on YouTube, I've shared the link. And on LinkedIn, on LinkedIn, I can't do it. Sorry. The StreamYard thing is free right now. Oh, I can do that directly on LinkedIn. So yeah, done that, folks. Participate in the Thinkers Frequency Growth Initiative, right? So that's what Mr. Burry is saying. Speaking of Mr. Burry and markets, on the global markets, the global markets are up, right? The global markets are up, and gold is also up, right? While everything stays where it stays. So US-China thing, Russia-US thing, Israel-Hamas thing, everything is pretty much where it was. But the markets are up and gold is up. So, and Mr. Burry says the best thing sometimes is to not play. Mr. Tushar Tiwari says that speech is love, heart. 100%. Yeah, that is I keep going back to that speech every once in a while, just to remind myself of what greatness sounds like. I just keep going to that speech every once in a while, and it really gets me going. Moving on, folks. That's what's happening. Some numbers have come in. By the way, speaking of numbers, I should say that we are growing. Thinkers frequency is growing. Now we are averaging about 18 to 20 people every episode on an average. So that's the viewership. Right now we have 15 people on YouTube and some 5 people on LinkedIn, right? So that's 20 people. That's not equal to that great auntie that I once saw who changed my life, who was like करें like करें like करें subscribe करें इसको like करें. I'm not still there. She was at like probably 400 people, but we are better than before. So we are growing. Cheers, folks. Cheers. Keep sharing it, bringing more people, and so on and so forth. Now you're personally invested, right? Now your skin is in the game. So it's awesome. Moving on, folks. Uh, there's a lot of delays and disruption. H1B anxiety. We've talked a lot about that. Job loss, dislocation fears across tech sector. There's still a lot of uncertainty as far as that market is considered. However, there are very varied set of alternatives that people are coming out with. Of course, we're talking about Europe. Of course, we're talking about different kinds of visas in US. Of course, we're talking about different moves that people are taking. So nothing has slowed down as much, right? As you would expect something. In fact, even the norm itself was changed because tech companies started lobbying against it. But some uncertainty, some unpredictability still exists. Visa processing at the department stalled because of the government shutdown. 70% of visa holders in US are Indian, H1B. So because of the government shutdown and everything, it's still a big problem. Numbers came out, folks. ITC has done okay, not that great. Sales have shrunk a bit in this quarter. Profits have expanded 4%, right? Hyundai India PAT rises 14%. So some good numbers have started pouring in as we discussed. Why do you think sales shrunk of ITC in this quarter? Anybody? Anybody would like to mention why ITC's sales number shrunk in this particular quarter, folks? We've talked about this. We've talked about this, and you should know about this. So I'll give you 5 seconds. The sales have shrunk because the effects are yet to kick in. Syntax, the cigarette play. Well, that's an interesting angle to look at it, Mr. Sumant Kumar. Mr. Pure Sethi says people were home and couldn't smoke around family. Mr. Mr. Eastic says people purchased. Okay, he deleted the comment. I couldn't see. Anyway, point is, folks, things are yet to kick in, right? The whole GST thing, rationalization, essentially hurt the supply chain, hurt the inventory play, hurt a lot of things. It unsettled the FMCG play. Now it's going to go and it's going to lead to cascading effects, which essentially help the company. About the cigarette revenues, they constitute a large part of the group still, and they are obviously going to get hurt. But the group is actively diversifying to make sure that it's not dependent on the cigarette money. But yes, that's also a drag, of course. So that's what's going on. Speaking of what is going on with the GST rationalization thing, the festive season has really helped. The automotive sector, passenger cars 19% up, two-wheelers 21%, tractors 12%, smartphones 35 million units sold, and so on and so forth. Just as we talked about it, all that finally played out in a very big way. So that's cool. And this is going to happen in the next quarter itself. So the good results are going to be very apparent in the second quarter. I mean, in the next quarter when the results come out in January. That's when you're going to see more good news coming in, right? Speaking of good news or the lack of it, smartphones, the premium smartphones, the slim smartphones, they've not really grown. So Apple's latest phone, which came out, right? It started with a 10%, contributed around 8 to 10% of the latest iPhone series, and now share has subsequently slipped to 2 to 3%, which is sort of expected because you're looking at such expensive phones, right? Apple and Samsung coming out with extremely expensive thin smartphones. I always was perplexed with the inherent market of them. Yes, there is a market for the premium products, but that was going a bit too far. Anyway, so they are not really selling that much, and that is a news item. Moving, folks. Cognizant is looking at a secondary listing. Cognizant is, of course, already listed in the US. It wants to evaluate whether a primary listing would be it or a secondary listing move would be it. If it gets listed in India, it will be the second largest player. So that is very, very interesting, whatever happens. Action around IPOs is not slowing down at all, no matter what. IPOs are heated up. IPOs are looking at staying heated up, despite everything that people are talking about as far as irrational exuberance in the primary market is considered. They're still pretty huge, right? All it takes, by the way, for the market to turn bad is one bad IPO. You remember when Paytm IPO'd, the market was very green, very hot. Then Paytm came along and then it crashed and everything went down. Everything went down by a lot, right? The whole market essentially got screwed just because of one bad listing. It was a very overvalued listing, $20 billion, and it came down and everything came down with it. So that's what's going on. I wrote Lenskart is another Paytm, but at the time they were looking at a $10 billion valuation. Now it's 7 to 8 billion, I guess. Whatever it is, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Mr. Abhishek Sharma says, will they create separate Indian entity or the parent company can also list at two separate exchanges? So that's what they're evaluating, secondary listing, primary listing, if they want to do an Indian play. So it's still up in the air, but it's a developing story, Mr. Sharma. So let's see. We're not going to talk about politics, of course, although there's a lot of action happening in politics, and it's just sad. Whatever conversations happen around politics, none of them instill any faith in me. As far as it's just it's enough to make you a pessimist. Unfortunately, it just makes you a pessimist when you hear political discussion. So glad we don't do that. Glad we don't do that, folks. Moving on, we've already talked about the US play, right? Speaking of trade tensions and the global tensions, US is also testing its nuclear weapons, right? Department of War has essentially asked nuclear tests to happen because Russia is testing it. So they're saying that, show of strength. So that's what's happening. Very weird. Very weird, folks. India is obviously worried about what happens to it. A very interesting thing has happened, folks. A very, very interesting thing has happened in the this thing play, right? Jayaprakash Associates, the JP guys, the God family has come back and given a bid to, in its bankruptcy proceedings. So we talked about JP Group getting liquidated and Vedanta in the fray buying it. Adani was looking at buying it. Vedanta came out with the biggest bid, some 17,000 crores or something of that sort. Promoters of JP have come back and said, we have an 18,000 crore plan. Now, this is, if you followed news over the years, the developing stories over the year, the biggest problem with the insolvency bankruptcy proceedings was that what if the promoter company comes back and buys their assets at one-tenth of the value? So let's say if I take 100 crore loan, right, and that loan turns bad, then my company starts getting liquidated. Then my loan is valued at 30-40 crores or 20 crores or maybe 15 crores, depending on how bad it is, right? Everybody bids for that loan for 10 to 20 crores. I come back and say 22 crores. I want to buy it. Is that fair? Is that okay? Is that a good thing, right? Or should it be allowed? If it's not allowed, should it be encouraged? Should it be incentivized? Should it be blocked? If it gets blocked, right, you're basically blocking ease of doing business because that guy is trying to raise money to get his company back. at the fair market value, the fair market value, of course, right, which the bankruptcy code has decided, do you block him even if he offers you more money than the rest of the market? So right now Vedanta's bid is at about 17,000 crores. What if they offer you 18,000 crores? Would you take their money, even though these are the people who essentially took the debt which turned bad? Now that is a very very interesting question, and people have been mulling on that question. Of course, the answer is not to, you know, stop them in any way possible, because that would just block the recovery. But at the same time, it creates a perverse monkey effect, right? It creates a bad incentive for a person to take a loan and let it slide and then buy back that loan in a very very small amount. So that is a problem. A comment on LinkedIn. uh, Mr. Raghavendra Joshi says GST rates, because GST rates increased. Increased? No, you seem to be a new viewer, Mr. Joshi. GST rates have not increased. Anyway, or are you talking about cigarettes? Moving on, folks. So that's what's happening with JP Group, Gore family coming in the fray. Would they be able to successfully bid and win their company back? Well, that'll be an impressive, inspiring story. I don't know it'll happen, and if God family is the same as it was. Now, Mr. Jayaprakash God, the patriarch, the founder of JP Group, he was an icon, right? He's a legend in many many ways. So if you go to Greater Noida and you look at the townships and everything, it's just next level. They really could have created something great if not for the political wind change, right? They could have created a great city. So he's a legend, but he is in his 90s. He's not effectively leading the fray, and the family is not the same without him. So uh, it's going to be very interesting how this particular bit shapes up. But till then, it's a developing story. Till then, what do you think is going to happen? Will they take it? So the beauty is that nobody knows how they'll arrange the money. Now they've said that they can have like an 18,000 crore plan, 5,000 crores, an upfront payment or something like that. But nobody knows who's going to lend to them, because they don't have the cash, of course. So they're going to borrow from someplace, and who's going to lend to them? Their reputation is at risk, of course. So that is all very very complicated. Uh, what do you think is going to happen? Would they be able to take their company back? Let's find out. Gold demand down 16% in Q2 as prices skyrocket. Of course, we've discussed this. Gold prices have been going up. By the way, gold prices have, we've talked about this. Gold prices have started going up, and people have started buying gold as it fell like 10, 7%, almost 9%. Now it's come back. So if you look at the 5-day losses, it's more about 2 or 3%. So it's pretty stable right now. That's what's happening with gold. In value terms, gold purchases are where they were. In fact, they've grown, but in volume terms, right, in the new purchases, the demand has been a little low, 16%, and it's coming back. So it's coming back. So there's a lot of action happening world over, not just India, but Japan and every country. From the central bank level, from the consumer level, gold's demand is not slowing down. Not slowing down, folks. Moving on, some numbers. NTPC, right? Net reports 2.9% fall in net. IEC, Indian Energy Exchange, profit up 14% at 123 crores. We've talked about IEC, right? How the government came up with the regulation and it basically turned everything around, right? It was pretty amazing what happened. ITC essentially lost its leadership strength, or all the leverage it had in the leadership market. IEX, I'm sorry, not ITC, because of that change of regulation, which was basically a price parity norm that every exchange is going to have that same price. So the market maker leverage that IEX has, that won't exist after that. So let's see what happens with that. The stock is a perpetual dumpster fire, but that is what it is. So right now it's doing okay. The profitability profile is somewhat stable, right? Cochin Shipyard to raise 6,000 crores for capex. This is gonna work out in 5-6 years. Cochin Shipyard is, of course, it is related to the whole maritime play that we've been talking about. India's next frontier of growth, maritime industry. That's very very interesting. That's going to be huge. right? Everything that happens in the shipbuilding and defense industry is going to help India in ways that we can't imagine right now, in ways we don't see. Mr. Ravi Kumar Gupta has a comment. The promoter should not be allowed to bid in the IBC proceedings. It's a moral hazard. But what if he offers more money and you are the bank and you want the money back? Would you not take the money just because he's the one who is offering it to you? Right, Mr. Gupta? That is the concern. So things are obviously not that black and white. But looking at Cochin Shipyard folks, coming back to that story, what does it remind you? What does it remind you that these companies suddenly start flying, right? What does it remind you of, right? It should remind you of the phrase that we keep talking about. All business outcomes are the result of political will, right? All business outcomes are the result of political will. And political will is not exercised by direct control. Sometimes just the politics needs to stay away from a business for it to fly. That's what happened with IT, right? It didn't get crushed because the regulators didn't understand it. By the time they understood it, it was too late. It was already big. If regulation existed in that play, maybe that industry also wouldn't have flourished, right? Uh, so for a very long time, Indian businesses, what they wanted was the regulations to just stay away. But now they're looking at support. They're looking at some sort of incentives, some national alignment, and so on and so forth. Speaking of national alignment and manufacturing and everything that we keep talking about, an interview has come out by the founder of HCL, Mr. Ajay Singh. I have his book. I haven't been able to finish reading his book. It was a good book though. Whatever I could read. What was its name, folks? I'm just missing its name. It was a pretty good book. Uh, yeah, it's there. Mr. Ajay Chaudhary, Just Aspire. Just Aspire. So I just started reading it. I haven't read it full. But he's come out with an explosive interview. And in that interview, he says all that manufacturing we do, it's just screwdriver technology, right? We just bring the kits from China, we assemble it here. That goes very counter to what Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav has been touting, that we are working on value addition, we are working on design elements, we are working on this, we are working on that. And we are at a stage of 28% of value addition. China is at 38%. We'll be there by 2032. That's what Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav has said. But Mr. Ajay Chaudhary has come out with an explosive interview, and he says that all of this is bullshit, right? And he says something, by the way, which is very collinear to what we've been talking about. He says that India has been a service country, and services still contribute to a lot of our industry. 60%, something he quoted, 60% of our GDP services. We need to be a product nation from top to bottom, which is obviously correct. Obviously correct, right? So that's what's happening, right? Speaking of products, I have not watched that full interview, but I want to. I've not been able to make time. But if you do, please let me know how you think about it. Reliance is taking a leaf out of the Campa book for electronics business. So Reliance has bought Kelvinator, I guess. That's what the company it had bought. Electrolux, was it? I am forgetting which company Reliance bought in this whole electronics play. Yeah, BPL was one and Kelvinator. Yeah. So licensed BPL has Kelvinator. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to go with the retail strategy that they give more margins for the retailers, margin expansion for these brands to just have a growth in sales, right? Taking a hit on the profitability profile to get an aggressive market share. Company plans aggressive pricing, higher trade margins for Kelvinator and BPL brands. This is very similar to what they've been doing in the consumer goods play. Is it gonna work? Is the consumer goods strategy of Campa, which by the way has not clearly worked as of now. There is growth, of course, but nobody knows if it has worked, right? Would it work in the electronics biz? There are high chances because when you're talking about an FMCG purchase of $10, right? Pricing doesn't really move the needle too much because the purchase is essentially a very small purchase, right? But that purchase, when it comes to a washing machine or something of that sort, right? The electronics goods, heavy goods, that suddenly becomes a lot of money, right? So maybe they are able to turn the corner when it comes to their electronics play. So disruptive move, right? Till now, Kelvinator and BPL brands are sold mainly from own stores. So margins said to be offered 8 to 15% points over established brands. Reliance has just started exports of these brands to Nepal and Bhutan as well, right? Bought Kelvinator for 160 crores, and that's going on. So this is very interesting, folks. What do you think? That was my reading of the situation, that it's going to make a difference. Do you think it's going to make a difference? Do you think more trade margin, that is more money to retailers, and aggressive pricing is going to lead to more sales of these particular products? Isn't there a lot of brand equity and trust involved? Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Moving on, folks. So there was a case where real estate joint development packs, JDPs, joint development packs is when landowners and developers have a thing, right? SC has stayed the GST demand on that. So the industry is in shock. Industry is saying, whoa, 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 right? This is going to be issue. Interim stays renews debate on such packs used to make upfront purchase of land rights. So it's obviously going to be a bit of a bottleneck for the real estate industry. Application of GST in this regard, but let's see what happens. This is quite complicated. This is a bit weird, right? Interim relief for now. Core issue is joint development agreement, a sale of land, or a supply of service. That's the play, right? So how this happens is, let's say you have a plot of land and you give it, right, and somebody develops it for you. He gets the rest of the let's say you have a plot of land and the developer comes and says, I'm going to build on this land and I'm going to give you the 6th floor, right? And the rest of it's going to be me. So that is an example, a vanilla example of joint development pact. Now, is it a service or is it a sale? What is it? Basis that, how do you tax it, right? How do you take a look at the transaction? How do you classify or qualify this transaction is a very interesting question. So SC has stayed GST demand, and let's see. So that's what's going on. Developers argue GST on JDS taxes land, leading to double taxation. But obviously, people have a different view. Unusual monsoons took a toll on United Breweries operations, says the CEO. They have come out with their earnings. The alcohol guys, the revenue has shrunk, the profitability profile has shrunk. They say that, it's basically some of our factories flood and some of our markets got ruined and so on and so forth. That's what they say. Standalone profit fell 5%. Sales also declined as 3 companies' breweries were flooded. But do you think it was the breweries that were flooded due to which the sales declined, or is it something else? Now, viewers of Thinkers Frequency obviously know the view on alcohol, right? We've been talking about this in depth for a very long time, right? We've been talking about this, right? So what do you think is the real cause of troubles in the alcohol play, folks? Is it just the monsoon? Was it the early monsoon that hurt the alcohol, sales across the board? So, similarly, if you remember, Sula guys came out with their report. We discussed that. Wine said that people are not buying that wine anymore, right? People are maybe buying the beer. The beer guy says that our industry got flooded, right? And early monsoon sort of screwed it up, right? At the same all the money essentially going in the premium play, right? Shift towards premium drink, says Mr. Abhishek, and also move away from alcohol. So the world is moving away from alcohol. Slowly and steadily, that's proving to be true. And we were the first to say it like 150 days ago, right? In one of the first few episodes, I remember saying that, hey guys, newsflash, alcohol sales is declining across the play. And that's going to lead to more and more results like that. And look at what happened. Quarter by quarter, every quarter, we've heard some excuse or the other saying that there's some problems with the industry, there's some this with the industry, so there's some that with the industry. Somehow we got flooded, somehow we got that, and so on and so forth, right? Is it a coincidence? Is it a coincidence, folks? No. US biosimilar norms to keep local drug companies in good health. Draft guidelines aim to speed up trials and give low-cost options to help Indian firms save on development costs, right? So some good news for Indian pharma, which is obviously, known news because we talked about this, if you remember. Aims of the draft biosimilar guidelines to simplify biosimilarity studies, reduce unnecessary clinical testing. Market opportunity is huge. FDA has approved 76 biosimilars. Now, US needs these things, even though it has led to a lot of tariffs, it didn't touch pharma. It didn't touch that because US market is deeply dependent on number one Chinese APIs and then Indian supplies, right? So it really doesn't do anything in the pharma play on its own. But that is changing because if you remember, Mr. Trump has been lobbying hard and he's saying that I'm going to tariff you 200% if you don't shift your manufacturing to India. But in a typical Trump fashion, he screwed it up. What he did was he ended up giving leeway to Pfizer and some companies if they sold cheap drugs on his website, Trump Drugs something website. So it could have been a Make in America thing, right? Which it was. These companies pledged like $125 billion in investments in US to make drugs back there, right? But some of that got stalled because these companies found a way to deal with the situation. Moving on, folks. Fed is cautious about rate cuts and you don't know where that goes, right? So rate cuts are obviously happening and that's what's going on. Speaking of rate cuts and rupee stability, RBI wants rupee globalization to support developed economic goals, says Deputy Governor. So Deputy Governor has come out with the situation saying that if we want to be a developed economy, we want it easier. We want it to be easy for people to export in their currency, right? He says that developed countries are so because their people, their businesses don't have the pressure of different currencies playing out, right? So exact words, when your currency is not commonly used or acceptable for global cross-border trades, that does not happen, right? The number of invoices in rupees is going up, but it is still quite low. But we believe that if you create conditions, eventually you'll reach a situation where people start doing that. One of the reasons advanced economies are what they are is because they can largely invoice in their currencies. So their businesses don't have to deal with that risk as much. So we are obviously talking about, this is another step in the world of de-dollarization, if you can call it, whole thing, internationalizing rupee. Obviously, rupee has been very weak when it comes to, currencies, dollar against dollar. It has been a bit of a problem, but they want it to change by internationalizing rupee and making sure that, the risks, the currency risks are sort of tapered. One of the things that he's also said is unbacked cryptos have no value. He says, and also he says stable coins serve no purpose that CBDCs can't do. CBDC is of course central bank digital currency. He says they do everything stable coins do, but stable coins have, it's a useless thing. And he also said cryptos are useless because they are unbacked, there's no cash flow and there's no liquidity and thus they have no value. So there is no liability essentially. So his words, let me say, stablecoins do not serve a purpose that cannot be done better with CBDC, and introducing stablecoins, not even on balance, would pretty much create a lot of policy concerns and issues that are best avoided. On cryptocurrencies, he said, I'm not using these words loosely. Unbacked crypto have no underlying cash flows, no issuer, and therefore no one's liability, and therefore they have no value. So that's his word on crypto and on stablecoins, on everything. Now, why do you think he's saying that? He's saying that because the only thing the government has a monopoly on, is what? There are two things that the government has a monopoly on. What are those two things, folks? What are the two things that the government has a monopoly on? Can you guess? I'll give you a hint. One is violence. The government has the ultimate authority on violence. Printing money, says Mr. Weber Manucha. Yes. So, money, currency, exactly, says Mr. Sumant Kumar. Government has the authority, the monopoly on money, right? The supply of money comes through them, and that's it. If the government essentially loses the monopoly on money, right, everything gets screwed. So with crypto, that is the biggest risk. That is everything that we've been talking about. And India's position on crypto stays very weak, But what is the future? Nobody knows, because as you know, everything depends on political will. So if the political will changes tomorrow about crypto, you'll suddenly see Indian stance also change on crypto. But for now, this is what the Indian government has to say. The deputy governor, this you can take as the official stance of the country on crypto, which is saying something, right? Which is obvious. Which is so back in 2018, I was looking at starting a company. The next company, 2019 was it? Yeah, and we were looking at starting a company, and we were essentially almost merged. My company was almost merged with a crypto company, right? And the person said, I remember it was April, or was it June or something? He said September is the ruling. तुम भी यहीं हो, मैं भी यहीं हूँ, देखना गवर्नमेंट क्या कहती है about crypto. So his point of view was that the government is gonna go heavy on crypto. It's gonna go bullish on crypto, and it's gonna allow crypto. And I was like, um, no, no. And many Septembers have passed since 2018, right? And it's not happened. So I was, only money which has been made in crypto has been made by the speculators, the traders who've just been punting on currencies and crypto coins and stuff like that. No real business case has come out of crypto. What is your current business, if I may ask, says Mr. Piyush Sethi? Oh, I've talked about this. It's an AI company. We help people connect through conversations with digital avatars and so on and so forth. It's gonna soon be out. It's in stealth right now, but we are doing a lot of good work. So wish us luck, and we'll make you proud. Right? That's the play. Moving on, folks. 10-year bond yield up 4 bips on fading US rate cuts hopes. So people think more rate cuts might not happen. So the bond prices are down, the yields are up on 10 years. Godspeed, says Mr. Piyush Sethi. Thank you so much. Mid-sized lenders tap foreign links tech to gain scale. Well, a lot of action happening in banking. Of course, we talked about this, folks. This particular quarter, the October, November, December quarter, is going to be an especially green quarter for banking. And if you remember, if you've been an old viewer of Thinker's Frequency, you would have known how we pointed out what's going to happen with banking in the next quarters. We said that it's going to be a bad quarter. The next 3 quarters are going to be bad. In the next 4th quarter, you're going to see some rise, right? And that's exactly what has shaped up, right? So if you've been looking at the story, if you've been watching Thinker's Frequency, and now people are watching Thinker's Frequency regularly, you would have known how we followed Mr. Michael Burry's advice, right? Sometimes the best thing is to not play. Again, the best way to make money is to not lose money. And how did we avoid not losing money? By, let's say, not participating in bad deals, not participating in FMCG back in the day, not participating in banking back in the day, talking about good companies, talking about not participating in staying away from some sectors that seemed very, very weird, right? Predicting things very, very accurately. That's what we've been doing. And that's a very, very good step, by the way. And we'll keep doing this, and we'll keep getting better on this. And let's see how that plans out, right? Moving on, folks. Maritime, 12 lakh crore investments pledged, 20% for shipbuilding. We've talked about that. There's a summit going on in that regard, right? Moving on. Banks told to double micro card rollout for faster MSME credit. Well, obviously, government is very, very bullish on the MSME sector, and they want a micro card play with a 5 lakh transaction limit or something of that sort, right? Credit limit scheme, 25 to 30,000 crores to MSMEs. Of course, if you look at the way to spur economy, what is the best way to spur economy? It's to essentially give some growth impetus to the small and medium and micro small businesses, right? That's essentially sets everything up. If those businesses start getting a lot of liquidity, everything starts happening, consumption starts happening, and so on and so forth. New growth can happen. So this is another move in that direction. This scheme was announced way back in the day, by the way. It didn't really catch up, but now they're advised to double it, right? So microcard rollout will be doubled in times to come. Moving on, folks. DLF net profits declines to 1000 crores, 1171 crore in September quarter. This is another thing that we talked about. The real estate is gonna slow down, right? If you remember the first 30-40 episodes, we talked about how real estate was overheated, and then we said it's gonna sort of taper down, and that's exactly what's happening. And now it's gonna go up. Office real estate, by the way, has been going up because of the whole GCC play. We talked about how the tier 2 play in real estate might just be a very, very good idea, and so on and so forth. So pretty, this is a good skill. I'll have to credit somebody for this, essentially. Prediction, of course, Scott Adams sir talks about the best way to judge intelligence, or the best way to be intelligent is to look into the future. But I got a real shot in the arm with this whole philosophy of predicting things by Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy. So do you know about Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy? He tried to run for US presidential elections, and then, he sort of ended up supporting Mr. Donald Trump. And talks were that he's going to be the vice president, but he lost that out to Mr. J.D. Vance, right? Due to whatever sad reasons. Now he's fighting to be a governor of Ohio, right? So that's what's working out. And he said, and he made a lot of predictions, mostly political. He made a lot of predictions, and they all came true, like with the time, right? Exactly down to the last minute. They all came true. And he said, look at the incentives and you will be able to predict the future down to the right time, right? And all you got to do is look at the incentives and the second order effects, right? And then you will be able to understand whatever is going. Of course, you'll have to discount what you don't know, right? The unknown unknown, the known unknowns, and so on and so forth. So you got to take that into account. But I'm really happy with the progress that we made. ECB hold rate steady as economy shows resilience. ECB is the European Central Bank. They're not cutting rates anymore. They've cut rates in the past. Recently, they cut, I guess, 1%. So they're not cutting it anymore. They say economy is showing some resilience. You got to take it as it goes. Deposit rate stays at 2%. ECB refrains from signaling next move, right? Germany's economy, by the way, is in the toilet. It stalled in the third quarter. Well, no surprise, bad policies for 10 years of Miss Angela Merkel screwed Germany, made it a literal shithole, and it's just gonna get worse, right? They also killed their nuclear power plants, and so on and so forth, all in the name of what climate change or whatever immigration policies they had, ruined the country, and it's only gonna get worse for Germany. You know why? There's an answer to that. You know why? It's overtly dependent on its high-tech automotive sector. So automotive sector is what runs the country. Germany essentially stands on cars, right? That's the industry which leads to everything in Germany, and that is in very, very deep stress. Very deep stress because of one reason. You know what that reason? Can viewers of Thinkers Frequency recall that reason? There's just one word, and it's gonna screw Germany. What is that? It's not just cars, by the way. Heavy engineering. BYD. No, those are three words. The one word is China. You're close, Mr. Sumant Kumar. China. So all the precision manufacturing. So earlier they were standing on this on the belief that China has the low-end manufacturing and we'll keep the ultra high-end, ultra precision manufacturing. But what they didn't see coming was that China will be able to do that as well, right? And it's coming, it's happening, and there is no respite for those guys. Right? Russian-Ukraine war is obviously heating up. We've talked about Swiggy's QIP. Right? We've talked about Snapmint's fundraise. Talked about Grow. We've talked about everything, folks. With that, we should come to the end of the 158th episode of Thinkers Frequency. Our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. It's 9:19. We should punch in anytime soon. I wish you a beautiful day personally and professionally. I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. Please share this program, wherever you can. WhatsApp status, write about it on LinkedIn. Support the patron thing, donate so that we can have more, we can do the intern thing. We're just a bit short from the 10K target. We'll get that and we'll be very happy. So do that, and it's going to be nice. It's going to be very nice. Maybe it's as nice as the $1 trillion OpenAI is looking at. Who knows? right? Shoot for the stars and you'll reach the sky, folks. Take care. Have a beautiful day.